You don't need another reminder to be kind. You've mastered that. You smile when you're uncomfortable. You say yes when your soul is screaming no. You keep the peace, even if it means losing pieces of yourself in the process. But let me ask you something. Who taught you that being nice was more important than being whole? Because somewhere along the way, you started confusing friendliness with faithfulness, and now you're overextended, overlooked, and quietly exhausted. This message isn't about becoming cold or closed off. It's about waking up to the truth that constant accessibility is not the same as purpose, and being liked is not the same as being called. So today we're drawing a line because the version of you that God is calling forward is not available for everything, everyone, all the time. Stop confusing being liked with being called. That confusion has kept so many people trapped in cycles of overextending themselves, saying yes when they mean no, and shrinking their truth just to maintain approval. Being liked feels good. It soothes the ego. It creates a sense of belonging, and it often opens doors socially. But being called is something entirely different. Being called requires alignment, conviction, and sometimes the courage to disappoint people in order to remain faithful to what you've been assigned to do. For many, the desire to be liked was formed early. You learned that approval meant safety. When people smiled at you, when they affirmed you, when they accepted you, it created a sense of worth. Over time, that desire evolved into a pattern. One where your decisions became less about purpose and more about perception. You started asking, will they still like me? Instead of, is this right for me? And without even realizing it, you handed over authority of your life to the opinions of others. The problem is that being liked is unstable. It shifts depending on people's moods, expectations, and personal preferences. You can do everything right and still be misunderstood. You can show up with a pure heart and still not be received the way you hope. If your identity is rooted in being liked, then every moment of rejection feels like a personal failure. But when your identity is rooted in your calling, rejection becomes redirection. It no longer defines you, it refines you. Being called will stretch you in ways being liked never will. Your calling will ask you to step into rooms where not everyone agrees with you. It will require you to set boundaries that some people won't understand. It will push you to outgrow environments where you were once celebrated simply because you're evolving. And in those moments, you will feel the tension between maintaining approval and honoring purpose. That tension is where many people compromise. You start diluting your voice to keep the peace. You start overcommitting because you don't want to disappoint. You start carrying responsibilities that were never yours because it feels easier than saying no. But every time you do that, you drift further away from your calling. Not because you're incapable, but because you're distracted, focused on managing perceptions instead of stewarding purpose. The truth is, everyone will not like you when you walk in your calling. And that's not a flaw. It's a sign that you're no longer living for universal approval. Your calling is specific. It's not designed to be understood or embraced by everyone. In fact, sometimes the very thing that sets you apart is what makes others uncomfortable. And if your goal is to remain liked by everyone, you will inevitably silence the parts of you that were meant to stand out. There is a cost to being called. It may cost you relationships that only thrived when you were shrinking. It may cost you opportunities that required you to compromise your values. It may cost you the version of yourself that felt safe but unfulfilled. But what you gain is far greater. You gain clarity, direction, and a sense of peace that doesn't depend on external validation. You have to decide which one you value more, temporary approval or lasting alignment, because you cannot fully pursue both. There will be moments where your calling demands a decision that risks how others perceive you. And in those moments, you reveal what truly leads your life. If you choose to protect being liked, you may preserve comfort, but you will sacrifice growth. If you choose to honor your calling, you may face discomfort, but you will step into purpose. This doesn't mean you become careless with people's feelings or dismissive of relationships. It means you become intentional. You understand that kindness does not require self-abandonment. You recognize that you can love people and still say no. You can be respectful and still be firm. You can show up with integrity without molding yourself into what everyone expects you to be. There is freedom in releasing the need to be liked by everyone. It allows you to show up authentically without constantly filtering yourself for approval. It gives you the courage to make decisions based on conviction rather than fear. And most importantly, it aligns you with the life you were meant to live, not the one shaped by other people's expectations. When you stop confusing being liked with being called, you begin to reclaim your power. You stop over-explaining your boundaries. You stop apologizing for outgrowing spaces that no longer fit. You stop negotiating your worth just to maintain acceptance. And in that space, you begin to experience a different kind of confidence, one that isn't dependent on applause, but anchored in purpose. The shift won't always feel comfortable. There will be moments where you question yourself, where you wonder if you're being too much or not enough. But those moments are part of the process of unlearning patterns that were never meant to define you. You're not here to be everything for everyone. You're here to be faithful to what's been placed inside you. So the next time you feel the pull to prioritize being liked over being aligned, pause. Ask yourself what is truly being asked of you in that moment, not what will keep others comfortable, but what will keep you honest. Because at the end of the day, your calling is not measured by how many people approve of you. It's measured by how willing you are to show up as who you were created to be. Your boundaries are not betrayal, they are obedience. That truth challenges everything you've been taught about loyalty, love, and what it means to show up for others. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that saying no makes you difficult, that choosing yourself makes you selfish, and that setting limits somehow means you're letting people down. So instead of honoring your capacity, you override it. Instead of protecting your peace, you sacrifice it, and you call that love, but real love was never meant to cost you your identity. Boundaries are not walls designed to keep people out. They are structures that keep you intact. They define what you can carry and what you were never meant to hold. When you ignore them, you don't become more loving, you become more depleted. You begin to show up half present, quietly resentful, emotionally exhausted. And the very relationships you were trying to preserve start to feel like burdens instead of blessings. The reason boundaries feel like betrayal is because of how people respond to them. When you've been consistently available, consistently accommodating, consistently self-sacrificing, people grow accustomed to that version of you. They expect it. They rely on it. And when you begin to shift, when you start saying no, when you start choosing rest, when you stop overextending, it disrupts the dynamic. And not everyone will celebrate that disruption. Some people will question you. Some will guilt you. Some will accuse you of changing. But what they're really responding to is the loss of access they once had to you. And if you're not careful, their discomfort will convince you that you're doing something wrong. You're not. You're finally doing something necessary. Obedience isn't always loud or visible. Sometimes it looks like declining an invitation that would drain you. Sometimes it looks like not answering a call you're not emotionally equipped to handle. Sometimes it looks like stepping back from spaces where your presence is expected but your purpose is absent. These choices may seem small, but they are deeply significant. They are acts of alignment because every time you say yes to something you were not meant to carry, you say no to something you were. Boundaries help you discern the difference. Without them, everything feels urgent. Everyone's needs feel like your responsibility. You become the solution, the support system, the one who holds it all together. And while that may earn you appreciation, it also creates imbalance. You start living a life that revolves around meeting expectations instead of fulfilling purpose. And the truth is, you were never called to be everything for everyone. You were called to be faithful with what is yours to carry. That requires discernment. It requires you to pause before responding, to check in with yourself instead of reacting out of habit. It requires you to recognize that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And that kind of awareness doesn't always come naturally when you've spent so long prioritizing others over yourself. There will be moments where setting a boundary feels uncomfortable. Your voice may shake, you may second-guess your decision, you may feel the urge to explain yourself over and over just to be understood. But boundaries are not negotiations, they are decisions. They don't require approval to be valid. And the more you practice them, the more confident you become in honoring them. You begin to realize that people who truly respect you will adjust. They may need time, they may not fully understand, but they will not require you to abandon yourself in order to maintain the relationship. And the ones who cannot accept your boundaries reveal something important, not about your worth, but about their expectations. Not every relationship is meant to grow with you. Some were built on versions of you that no longer exist. That doesn't make you disloyal. It makes you honest. There is a difference between being available and being assigned. Just because someone needs something doesn't mean it's yours to give. Just because you've always been the one to step in doesn't mean you're supposed to continue. Growth requires revaluation. It asks you to look at your patterns, your habits, your relationships, and decide what still aligns. Boundaries are part of that alignment. They create space for you to breathe, to think, to exist without constant demand. They allow you to show up in your life with intention instead of obligation. And when you are no longer stretched thin, you begin to experience a different kind of presence, one that is grounded, focused, and sustainable. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to justify your limits. You don't have to prove your worth by how much you can carry. You are allowed to choose yourself. And choosing yourself is not an act of rejection toward others. It is an act of respect toward who you are becoming. When you understand that your boundaries are obedience, everything shifts. You stop seeing them as something to apologize for and start recognizing them as something to honor. You stop feeling guilty for protecting your time and start feeling responsible for how you steward it. You stop overcommitting out of fear and start making decisions from a place of clarity because you know that your energy is finite, your capacity is not unlimited, and your purpose requires you to be intentional with both. So the next time you feel the tension between saying yes to keep the peace and saying no to protect your peace, remember this: obedience will not always look like agreement. It will not always be comfortable. It will not always be understood. But it will always lead you back to alignment. And alignment is where your strength, your clarity, and your purpose begin to flow without resistance. Not every invitation is assigned to your purpose. That truth sounds simple, but it has the power to completely transform the way you move through life. Because if you're honest, you've said yes to things that felt good in the moment, but left you drained afterward. You've accepted opportunities that looked right on the outside, but felt misaligned on the inside. And you've done it not because you lacked awareness, but because you didn't want to miss out, disappoint others, or appear ungrateful. But every yes has a cost: time, energy, attention. These are not unlimited resources. Every time you say yes to something, you are making a decision about where those resources go. And if you're not intentional, you will find yourself investing in things that have nothing to do with where you're actually meant to go. You'll be busy but not effective, present but not purposeful, involved but not aligned. The problem isn't that opportunities are bad. The problem is that not all opportunities are meant for you. There is a difference between what is available and what is assigned. Availability means the door is open. Assignment means it's yours to walk through. And just because something is available doesn't automatically mean it aligns with your purpose. But when you've been conditioned to equate opportunity with obligation, it becomes difficult to tell the difference. You start to believe that every open door is a sign you should step through it, that every request deserves a yes, that every chance to be included is something you should take. And while that mindset may come from a place of gratitude or ambition, it often leads to overextension and confusion because purpose requires focus. When you try to do everything, you dilute your effectiveness in the things that actually matter. You spread yourself thin across commitments that pull you in different directions. And instead of moving forward with clarity, you find yourself stuck in cycles of business that don't produce meaningful progress. Discernment is what protects you from that cycle. It allows you to pause before responding, to ask not just, can I do this, but should I do this? To consider not just the opportunity itself, but the impact it will have on your time, your energy, and your direction. And that kind of reflection is necessary if you want to live with intention, because the truth is, some invitations are distractions dressed as opportunities. They look appealing. They may even align with your skills or interests, but they are not connected to your assignment. And if you're not careful, you will invest in them simply because they're good, not because they're right. There will be moments where saying no feels uncomfortable, especially when the opportunity seems positive. You may question whether you're making a mistake. You may wonder if you're closing a door that won't open again. But part of trusting your purpose is understanding that what is meant for you will not require you to abandon alignment to access it. You don't have to chase everything to find what's yours. In fact, constantly chasing can be a sign that you're not rooted in clarity. When you are clear about your purpose, your decisions begin to reflect that clarity. You become more selective, not out of fear, but out of understanding. You recognize that your time is valuable, your energy is sacred, and your focus is necessary. And because of that, you don't feel the need to prove yourself by saying yes to everything. You start to measure opportunities differently. Instead of asking how it looks, you ask how it aligns. Instead of considering how others will perceive your decision, you consider how it will impact your direction. Instead of reacting quickly, you respond thoughtfully. And in doing so, you create space for the right opportunities to find you. Because when you are constantly occupied with the wrong things, you are unavailable for the right ones. That's the part many people overlook. They think saying yes keeps them open, but in reality, it often keeps them distracted. It fills their schedule with commitments that leave no room for growth, creativity, or rest. And when something truly aligned comes along, they don't have the capacity to engage with it fully. That's why restraint is just as important as action. Knowing when not to move is part of the process. Knowing when to decline, when to step back, when to wait. These are not signs of missed opportunity. They are signs of maturity. They reflect an understanding that purpose is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters. You are not here to attend every event, accept every offer, or meet every expectation. You are here to fulfill a specific assignment, and that assignment requires your attention. It requires your presence. It requires your willingness to say no to things that don't support it. There will be people who don't understand your decisions. They may see your no as disinterest or distance. They may question your priorities or assume you're holding back. But your responsibility is not to manage their perceptions. It is to remain aligned with your purpose. You don't owe every opportunity your participation. You owe your purpose your focus, And sometimes that means letting go of things that are good in order to make room for what is right. It means trusting that you don't have to be everywhere to be effective. It means believing that your value is not determined by how much you do, but by how well you do what you're actually called to do. Clarity will not eliminate options, it will refine them. It will help you see the difference between what is urgent and what is important. It will guide you toward decisions that support your growth instead of draining your energy. And it will give you the confidence to walk away from things that are not meant for you without feeling like you're missing out. Because you're not missing out, you're making space. Space for alignment, space for purpose, space for the kind of life that isn't built on constant activity, but on intentional action. So the next time an invitation comes your way, pause. Don't rush to respond. Don't let pressure or expectation make the decision for you. Take a moment to consider what it's asking of you and whether it aligns with where you're meant to go. Because not every open door is your direction, and not every invitation deserves your yes. You can be kind without being constantly available. That distinction is where so many people struggle, because for a long time, you've equated kindness with accessibility. You've believed that being a good person means always responding, always showing up, always making space for others, no matter what it costs you. And while that may look admirable on the outside, it often leads to a quiet kind of exhaustion on the inside. Kindness is about how you treat people. Availability is about how often you make yourself accessible. Those two things are not the same. But when they become intertwined, you begin to lose sight of your own limits. You start to believe that every message deserves an immediate reply, every request deserves your time, and every need requires your attention. And before you realize it, your life is no longer your own. It's a constant reaction to everyone else. The truth is, constant availability is not sustainable. You were never meant to be on call for everyone in your life at all times. You were never designed to carry every conversation, solve every problem, or meet every expectation. And yet, when you try to maintain that level of access, you end up stretching yourself so thin that even your kindness starts to feel forced. You respond, but without presence. You show up, but without energy. You give, but without joy. That's not because you're unkind, it's because you're overwhelmed. Real kindness is intentional, it's thoughtful, it's rooted in a place of fullness, not depletion. And you cannot offer that kind of kindness if you are constantly pouring from an empty place. That's why boundaries around your availability are not a rejection of others. They are a protection of your ability to show up well when it actually matters. When you are always available, people stop recognizing your presence as something valuable. It becomes expected, normalized, and sometimes even taken for granted, not because people are inherently ungrateful, but because what is always accessible often loses its significance. But when you begin to create healthy limits, something shifts. Your time becomes more intentional. Your presence becomes more meaningful, and your interactions carry more depth because they are no longer rushed or obligatory. This doesn't mean you withdraw from people or become distant. It means you become selective. You start choosing when and how you engage instead of reacting to every demand placed on you. You begin to understand that just because you can respond immediately doesn't mean you should. That just because you're free in a moment doesn't mean that moment belongs to someone else. There is power in pausing, in not answering right away, in giving yourself space to decide what you actually have the capacity for. Because when you remove that pause, you default to habit. And if your habit has been overextending yourself, then you will continue to do so without even thinking about it. But when you introduce intention, you create the opportunity to choose differently. You can still be kind and say, I'll get back to you later. You can still be kind and decline a request that doesn't fit your capacity. You can still be kind and take time for yourself without explaining every detail. Kindness does not require constant access. And the people who truly value you will understand that. They will respect your time. They will appreciate your presence, even if it's not immediate. They will recognize that your boundaries are not about pushing them away, but about maintaining balance in your life. And the ones who struggle with your limits reveal something important, not about your character, but about their expectations. You have to be careful not to internalize that struggle as guilt, because guilt will try to convince you that you're doing something wrong when you're actually doing something necessary. It will tell you that you're being distant when you're simply being intentional. It will make you question your decisions, even when those decisions are protecting your well-being. But you are allowed to have moments that are not interrupted. You are allowed to have time that is not accounted for by others. You are allowed to exist without constantly being needed. That doesn't make you less caring. It makes you more balanced. And balance is what allows your kindness to remain genuine. When you start honoring your availability, you begin to experience a different kind of freedom. You no longer feel pressured to respond to everything. You no longer feel obligated to say yes out of habit. You no longer feel responsible for managing everyone else's expectations. And in that space, you start to reconnect with yourself. You begin to notice what you actually need: rest, silence, time to think, time to just be. These are not luxuries, they are necessities. And when you protect them, you create a life that is not constantly reactive, but intentionally lived. It's important to understand that you don't have to earn the right to rest by exhausting yourself first. You don't have to prove your kindness by how much you give away. You don't have to validate your worth through constant availability. You are valuable even when you are not responding. You are worthy even when you are not producing. You are enough even when you are not accessible. That truth may feel unfamiliar at first, especially if you've spent so much time being the one everyone relies on. But it is necessary if you want to live a life that is sustainable. Because the goal is not to be everything for everyone. The goal is to be present, whole, and aligned in the moments that truly matter. And that requires you to step back sometimes, to disconnect, to say no, to choose yourself without apology. You can still love people deeply. You can still support them. You can still show up in meaningful ways. But you can do all of that without sacrificing your peace. That is what healthy kindness looks like. It is not constant. It is not exhausting. It is not rooted in obligation. It is intentional, balanced, and sustainable. So the next time you feel the pressure to be available simply because you always have been, pause. Remind yourself that kindness is not measured by how quickly you respond or how often you say yes. It is measured by the authenticity of your presence and the integrity of your actions. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for others is to not be available at all times.